Welcome to Supercool, the show about real-world climate solutions that cut carbon, boost the bottom line, and improve modern life. Each week on Supercool, we go behind the headlines to pinpoint the stories and data accelerating the low-carbon economy in towns and cities across the U.S. and around the globe. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. Please take a moment to tap the follow button on the top of your screen to make sure you receive all future episodes. Entrepreneurs know there's a lot to be said for timing. You can have a billion-dollar, world-changing idea, but it will languish if the world isn't ready for it. Just about every investor pitch deck that entrepreneurs craft has a why now page, hoping to convey to investors that mighty forces are aligning to make now, this moment, the perfect time to launch and build their business. Today's episode begins with a business idea that was nearly 3 decades ahead of its time. A solution that addresses one of the biggest humanitarian, economic, and climate challenges our civilization faces. Are you ready for it? It's leaks. Leaks that occur in buildings, specifically in the air ducts and the overall building envelope, including the walls, windows, and doors. How big a problem is it? At a very high level, think of it like this. Globally, buildings consume about 40% of all energy and create about 33% of all greenhouse gas emissions. These are rough numbers, but generally aligned with leading data compilers like the International Energy Agency. Half the energy used in buildings goes to heating and cooling indoor spaces. So 40% of all energy for buildings, half for heating and cooling. That means 20% of all global energy is for heating and cooling indoor space. Here's the kicker. Half of that is wasted because of leaks. We consume it, we pay for it, it causes climate change, yet we don't get any benefit from it because of the leaks in the ducts, the walls, etc. 10% of all energy in the world wasted because of holes in our buildings and our ducts. That just sounds incredibly dumb to me. I mean, we're supposed to be an advanced civilization, and leaks? Come on, that's crazy. What's crazier is that the solution to fixing it has been around for 30 years. But it all comes back to timing. Here's what I mean. In 1994, Dr. Mark Modera, now a professor at UC Davis, invented a solution to these leaks. He came up with a way to inject a fine mist of non-toxic aerosol particles into a duct system and enable these particles to seek out and adhere to leaks and cracks within the ductwork, effectively sealing them from the inside out without needing to access the ductwork directly, which is huge because these systems are in the walls, the ceiling, and the basement, not exactly easy places to access. His technology, Aeroseal, made identifying leaks and plugging them up easy. At least it sounded easy. It turns out it's pretty complicated, but the basic approach was right. Professor Modera wasn't able to turn the technology into a viable business, so he sold the rights to Carrier, the American multinational that invented modern air conditioning in 1902 and is today one of the global leaders in HVAC systems. So Carrier got the tech. It seemed like a good fit, but still, Aeroseal languished, struggling to gain traction and become a viable business. Fast forward to 2009. Along comes Amit Gupta, a rising executive at Carrier. The Aeroseal product line becomes one of his responsibilities to manage. And for Amit, the light bulb goes off immediately. He instantly sees the potential in the business. It could save homeowners and building owners so much money on their energy bills and make indoor air quality so much healthier. It's a game changer. He thinks of his relatives in the UK and Brits in general who live in some of the leakiest homes in the modern developed world. For many in England and around the world, home energy bills are so expensive, it comes down to a constant struggle to decide whether to heat or eat. And for Amit, that's incredibly vexing. And so here is Aeroseal, the solution. But Aeroseal within Carrier is a dead end. So Amit makes a leap, a huge, risky, momentous leap. He negotiates with Carrier to take ownership of the technology, leaving his executive lifestyle and secure future behind to make a dent in the universe and try to scale up a solution that can solve these extremely vexing issues. Now it's 2010. Amit is the founder and CEO of the newly constituted Aeroseal. He starts bootstrapping the business, methodically developing it, being opportunistic in pursuing sales, at first focused on homeowners in older leaky homes. He further develops the technology and receives global patents. He keeps improving and opening markets. Then the momentous happens, the incredible sea change. The world's biggest builders, cities, and investors grasp the urgency of the climate challenge. And Amit, he's ready. His company is ready. Aeroseal enters its next phase. In 2023, the foremost climate tech investor on the planet, Bill Gates, leads Aeroseal's Series B venture capital round through his fund, Breakthrough Energy Ventures, along with another fund, Climate Partners. And they join other world-class investors like Aramco Ventures, Building Ventures, 2150, and Energy Impact Partners. Aeroseal's solution, 3 decades in the making, is now winning the hearts and minds of investors and customers. Customers like the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas and the MetLife building in New York City, which towers above Grand Central Station, and internationally, in just about every tall building in the likes of Dubai. But here's the key point, which we'll hear about from Amit. Aeroseal is winning business not by selling customers on solving long-term climate change, but on solving problems that feel far more pressing right now. High energy bills, poor indoor air quality, and uncomfortable living and working conditions. That's what builds the business. And business for Aeroseal today is good. Now Amit and his team are working on making it great. Here's our conversation. Amit, welcome to Supercool.
I'm excited to be here.
So let's dig into the backstory on Aeroseal. The founding history of Aeroseal in its own right defies, or certainly is not the typical expectation of when we think about a startup. It certainly has a longer history. Kind of walk us through some of that and how this idea came about.
So the original idea was actually developed by Dr. Mark Madeira at LBNL, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory in California. This was in mid-90s, and he was working at a lab, and the problem he was trying to solve was leaking air ducts in homes. And he tried various methods, robots, trying to find something to crawl in the ductwork. And this was funded by DOE and I think California Energy Commission at the time. And what he realized that trying to solve it from outside versus inside, the inside is so much better because so much more flexibility in how it can be done. So he came up with this method of creating a fog of material and injecting it under pressure, and it automatically seals the leak. So that's how it all happened in mid-90s. He thought that he's developed something super cool, and back to your podcast name, and people will license that technology, and the technology will literally change the world because there's ducts everywhere. That did not happen. So this is a California garage story from there. He went part-time at the lab and licensed his own technology from the lab. That was the first time the technology came out in the marketplace and got Carrier Corporation's attention that, hey, this could really solve a serious problem. And the idea was that instead of installing a high-efficiency furnace or an air conditioner, if you can install a regular air conditioner with sealing ductwork, you get a much higher overall efficiency. In fact, in many cases, if you install a high-efficiency furnace without sealing the ductwork, it might not work very well. So that was the idea which got attention from Carrier, and Carrier bought the technology at the very early stage in 2001. I joined Carrier in 2002 in their leadership program. I came from India to do my MBA, so that was a very, good moment for me to join. When Carrier bought Aeroseal, 9/11 happened literally 2 weeks after that, and it sort of got lost in that shuffle, right? So when I joined Carrier, I didn't even know about Aeroseal at the time. In 2009, I was first introduced with Aeroseal, and I saw the vision which inspired Carrier to buy the technology. I was like, we can take this technology, develop more technologies around it, and this could be $1 billion opportunity. So I try to make a case that, hey, our business model needs to evolve, our approach of how we're going to market needs to evolve, but there is nothing which should prevent this technology to make a big impact on the world. I mean, we were investing close to $90 million at that time to make a furnace for homes, which was, I think, 3 points or 2 points more efficient. We already had a 95% efficient furnace, and we were investing that much money to make a 97.5% efficient furnace. And I was so passionate at the time that 2 points of more efficiency, sure, it gives us the pole position, right? The most efficient furnace in the industry, but it doesn't do much. It's like driving a car with more efficient engine, but a gas tank with a leak in it, right? So I was able to buy the technology out of Carrier and bootstrap the company, partnering with Dr. Mark Madera. So that's how we got started in 2010.
Got it. Thank you for walking us through that. So you joined Carrier, you spent about a decade there. You're rising up through this leadership program. Carrier's a big, giant company. You're touching on a lot of different businesses as you're growing your career there. Years into that, you get exposed to Aeroseal and this idea, like 15 years, 16 years, someone, this inventor had invented this incredible thing that's going to change the world, but just can't find its foothold in the business world to actually take this idea and commercialize it. So you are in 2010, I mean, it sounds like you're entrepreneurial, but you're not an entrepreneur. And right. you take a big leap, right? When you say, hey, like I'm betting on this technology, but I'm betting everything on this technology, right? I'm betting like my comfortable executive existence and I can see that future, right? But I'm going to go do this. And so talk to us about what are the products, what got you so excited, and what problem really are you solving?
Sure. So at that time when we started, we only had product to do duct sealing, and primarily we were focusing on homes, residences, retrofitting the homes, right? So if people have issues in their home, like their upstairs rooms are hot in summer because they don't get enough air, their bedrooms are stuffy, or basements are very cold because the cold air is not making upstairs, all those problems we could solve. Or in Florida or in other coastal regions where you live, if your return ducts are leaking, you'll get humidity in the home. And then the air conditioner is working primarily to dehumidify the home, right? And the air ducts play a very, very important role. So what really got me excited at the time was the data which I read that for US homes, air duct leakage is the single largest reason for energy wastage. We are wasting 540 trillion BTUs every year just because of leaking air ducts.
This is just in single family homes.
Single family homes in the US.
Across America. That is staggering. The thing is, I mean, nobody knows that, right? Like, no, and again, like you're describing a problem that I am actually like personally facing today. We bought a new house here, Surfside Beach, South Carolina. A year in, like we're running the AC because we think we have mold issues. We're trying to dehumidify the house. It's crazy. Right. And this is a new house. I mean, the housing stock across America, which is like 40 years old, everything's middle-aged.
That is very true. So
yeah.
Then we developed from residential homes solution to commercial. But commercial ductwork has the same problem, right? These ducts are behind walls, behind ceilings, in offices and hospitals and hotels. When you go to a big city and you're in a high-rise hotel and you take a shower, the whole room is filled with steam many times. And you have like a misty smell in the room. That's because the ventilation is not working. So we developed the product from residential duct sealing to commercial duct sealing. Subsequently, we partnered with UC Davis, and Dr. Mark Madera was a director at a research center in University of California. And we developed a building envelope solution, right? So similar concept, but now we could seal the whole building envelope. And that's where we're working with most of the major builders in the country and around the world. Subsequently, we also developed technologies for underground gas pipeline sealing. So the concept is the same, which is pressure and airflow to get the micron-sized particles of sealant material to the leaks and automate the way to make the seal rather than physically access the leaks or the cracks. So those are the three products we have.
I want to get into how you've grown the company, marketing, the different product lines, these different markets you're attacking. Before we do that, give us just a fundamental understanding of what the Aeroseal solution is?
The way I like to describe our product is we are like a fix-a-flat for the buildings. So we pressurize a space. Imagine your house. We'll put a big temporary fabric door in your front door, and we'll put a big fan and create a pressure or negative pressure in the building envelope. And wherever the leaks are, you can measure how much building is leaking, right? There's a standards for that. You pressurize up to 50 pascals, and that's how you get a reading. And the leakage is measured in ACH, which is air changes per hour. So that's the first step for us. Of course, to pressurize the space, we have to close off the natural openings, like the windows have to be closed, or in ducts, you have to close off the register. So we put a tape over the register. Now the air is only leaking out where it should not go out. And the second step is we create a few micron sized particle fog in the space. And that fog, as the air is leaking out, gets carried with the air. And with physics, as it tries to escape the leaks, it accelerates. It accelerates multiple folds, and the particle attaches to the edge, and the second set of particle attaches to the first set of particle, and within minutes, it'll seal up the leak. Like in a building or a 2,500 square feet home, the sealing could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 60, 90 minutes. So the whole envelope gets sealed. You don't have to go find the leaks. Similarly, when we do the work in existing homes, it takes 25 minutes to an hour to make a seal. Now we have to do a little bit more prep, so it might take a couple hours of prep and taking the machine in, take the machine out. But that's how the process works. We pressurize the space, create a fog of material. Everything is controlled by our software. So we're measuring airflow, we're measuring pressure, we're measuring humidity, we're controlling the temperature, creating that Goldilocks zone for the seal to happen. It sounds easy, but we have algorithms, which is the key for us to make it happen. And that's how we make a seal.
Awesome. That is the funny thing about your business is it does sound easy. Something that you said really resonated with me. When you talk about a large building and you've got all these leaks, you've got leaks in the building envelope, you've got leaks in the ductwork. But I've heard you say buildings responsible for 40% of all energy globally, give or take, right? Heating and cooling is responsible for largely 50% of the energy in buildings, and 50% of that is just wasted because of leaks. That's like mind-blowing to me. And there's very, very few solutions, maybe like in certain respects, I know you would argue none other than Aeroseal, and I get that. And this is what you said, Amit, that really hit home for me. If you think about a building and you think about the ductwork, it's behind the walls, it's in the ceilings. How are you going to open up all that space and fix it? You can't. And I've heard you say you've done some really iconic buildings like the Wynn Hotel in Vegas. That thing is unbelievably massive. The MetLife building, others in Dubai. So maybe just talk us through, what does that mean to go into a commercial building? Like, you can pressurize a building and put this fog in and it'll work in that kind of environment?
Absolutely. Let me be clear though. When we are doing existing commercial buildings, primarily we are doing air ducts on ventilation shafts, right? So that's our primary focus. When we do building envelopes, we have done some industrial commercial spaces existing, but primarily we are working with new construction. The way it works, like let's take an example of MetLife building, right? Everybody probably heard about and seen MetLife building. What
right
we
above
do,
Grand Central, right?
Right above
Grand Central Station.
The problem they were trying to solve was ventilation issues. As I mentioned, if the ventilation is not working, you'll have bathrooms which are stinky, and you cannot have a good airflow in the building. The building won't remain healthy if the ventilation is not working. And in New York, we have done hundreds of buildings for fixing ventilation issues. Many times these ventilation shafts are made up of course, sheet metal, but sometimes they're made up of masonry shafts. Sometimes they're made up of just sheetrock, and they have lots of connections. And if they leak, you will not get the negative pressure at the grill to create that suction to create the ventilation. So in MetLife building specifically, it was metal shafts, and it was a very large building. So we did the work in nights and weekends. We attach our fan, we measured the amount of leakage there is. So we do it the whole shaft, multiple stories. We'll block off all the openings from all the registers in the bathrooms, and then we pressurize it. So we measured the leakage, and then we started the work around probably 7:30 p.m., and we would be out of there by think 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., something like that.
And how big is the shaft? Like, how big is this?
Oh, you can drive a car in the shaft at the fan. It's very, very big.
Okay, so that's where you're going in. You're trying to seal all the leaks in that ductwork.
Right, right. It starts very big, and then it tapers down when it goes down all the way to 20 floors, right? So it was a big shaft, very big fan, but we were able to pressurize it. We were able to create the fog, create the right environment, as I was saying, for our algorithms, and we made a seal. And the problem got solved. And we have done this in many hotels, as I mentioned. Hospitals is another good place where we go do the work. So primarily nights and weekends in the existing building. It's safe. So it's not that we only have to do nights and weekends. Like in residential high rises, we do it during the normal daytime.
Sure.
So the homeowners or the occupant doesn't have to move out. We try to minimize the disruption for commercial buildings. That's why we do nights and weekends.
And so for MetLife, it's the owners of the building. What's the value proposition to them? They want to improve ventilation, but is it for health? Is it cost savings? What drives that sale?
Our solution has really 3 major benefits. So the first benefit I was just mentioning about, if the building is really not working, if the occupants are not happy with the building, like in this particular case, if the bathrooms are really very stinky, then the occupants are not happy and we will fix that. The airflow issues, right? So the air quality is one. The airflow issues, like in hospitals, if you can't have enough pressurization in the operating theater, we can fix that as well. So those are the issues we can fix. Comfort issues, like if certain parts of the building are not working, we can fix that as well. And the third reason is energy savings, because by fixing the buildings, we can reduce the overall load on the building and the fans could slow down, and that consumes a lot less energy and improves the carbon footprint of the building. Like in New York, we have done lots of work which have direct impact on the targets building owners are trying to reach in Local Law 97.
I'm imagining as codes are getting stricter, people see the writing on the wall that this is coming. New York has led. You see some of the cities out on the Pacific Northwest, I think
Right.
Seattle, Vancouver, pushing this forward. People know where it's going. So I'm imagining myself, I'm an operator of a commercial building. I have tenants. Tenants are complaining about air quality. And I'm in a city like New York City. In this case, I'm trying to charge like a major premium, right, on my space.
Right.
But the space isn't delivering a premium experience. I could see that being a very big driver where I, as the owner operator of that building, can see a pretty clear ROI on this solution because I'm going to be able to charge the rents to my tenants that I need to run a profitable building.
Of course, you're right in identifying that there is this renter and building owner conflict. Conflict's not the right word, but different incentives, right? Who's paying the bills, who's improving the buildings, etc. So owner-occupied buildings is obviously a better choice or easier choice, like hotels or universities or federal buildings like military bases or even hospitals. There's much more alignment with that for us.
What's the contract? How are they paying for this service?
So we generally do start the project with a very quick audit, which give us the operating parameters of the building. Once you get all the operating parameters, we get all the drawings for the building, mechanical drawings of the building, and we can do a very thorough analysis of how much it takes for us to do the work and how much energy savings they would have. Of course, that also fixes the problem. So that's the added benefit, whatever problems they're having in the building. And we provide that back to the building owner to say, okay, this is your ROI, which we generally are able to get to around 4 years to 6 years, 7 years in some cases. We then work with utilities. We work with other incentive providers to say, in many cases, like in New York, you can get up to 30%, in some cases up to 70% incentive for doing the work. And we bring the whole package back to the building owner.
How would I think about a 4 to 6 year payback? Is it a payback on $100,000? Is it on $1 million?
Generally, the range of pricing could be, depending on complexity, depending on lots of factors, could be anywhere from, if you're doing all the ductwork, right, which is ventilation and supply and return, could be anywhere from 40 cents per square feet, 50 cents per square feet to $1 per square foot. So a 100,000 square feet building we might charge $100,000. And given the operation of the building, it's 24/7, 365, all that, you should be able to get, 5-year payback.
Yeah, absolutely. I can completely see that. Just wanted to get a ballpark of that.
The ducts don't contribute or would improve half of the energy, right? Ducts would have a smaller portion of it. It's
envelope
the whole envelope plus duct, yes. I just want to clarify, people don't say, oh, okay, I'll do this and I'll have half the energy cost saved for sealing the ducts. But it'd still be quite substantial.
So that's on the commercial side. When you guys spun out of Carrier and you started commercializing the business, you were going after the homes that are already built, older, have a lot of duct work. That's interesting. I'm curious like how that actually scales, because I think that's probably challenging to sell into. But maybe we'll just talk about it for a second, because one of the things that struck me, Amit, when you were talking about selling to people in their homes who have, again, rooms that are drafty or the air quality is kind of crappy, they're running a dehumidifier. But I heard you say that the biggest obstacle that you have to overcome, it's kind of a classic MBA thing. It's like your biggest competitor is not some other company. Your biggest competitor is the space heater that someone has gotten used to, right? Because they're like, yeah, I'll just live with the fact that like my system's not great. I got to put this space heater, right? Like it's the default mediocre lifestyle that Americans and in other countries too are accustomed to in our like houses that really weren't really built that great, or they're just older and now the leak, it's become, everything's exacerbated. So you got to overcome that inertia, right?
Right. The idea that homes do not have to be crappy is what we're trying to overcome. Right?
Okay, good. New tagline, yeah.
We are ingenious, right? I find it shameful to design something, build something which should last for decades and decades, which is just so suboptimal. It just is not right. And I'll give you an example, a little bit digression, like UK homes, and we are making a big effort and working with builders and sealing up UK homes. Both my sisters live there, and they are so drafty. They're 9 times worse than Switzerland or Norway. My wife is from Norway. We have a ski cabin there. And when 15 of us family members are there in the middle of the winter, right, we actually have to turn down our heat because the houses are built really tight. They're ventilated right, insulated right. And we don't have to be living like the people live in UK, where they talk about heat or eat, because for the lower income level, that's the choice they have to face. I find it very vexing. We should be able to fix it. So that's what's driving me, right? And like we can fix UK homes. I mean, I think UK government was borrowing £100 billion subsidizing energy costs. As I said, you can see it, right? I'm torn that why do we have to be in that situation?
Yeah. 15 years in, you're just getting started. This is proven technology. You're working with like really big, really important buildings, big clients, but to really have impact, you have such a long way to go. And I see that fire to continue to solve this. The US market, the US home building market, what's interesting when you look at new home building, the market share of the largest home builders is growing every year, for better or worse. It just is a fact, right? Like Planted, we work with D.R. Horton, the company that I helped get off the ground for building materials. They're the biggest. You've got Lennar, you've got Pulte. I know you work with some of them. I've seen on your website that you're working with Beazer, another really big one. So more and more of the market, and I don't know what the exact number is today, but I think if you take probably the top 20 builders, they build probably like 40% of all new homes in America. And then it gets very fragmented, right? So getting in with those big builders as they're building new homes, is this an opportunity for you?
Yeah, that is the fastest growing opportunity for us. So we're working with almost every major builder. We work with Lennar, we work with Toll, we work with DR, we work with Beazer. So every major builder, but we have not yet gotten to the very standard way of building the homes. So we are working with them in one division or one part of the country, either because the building codes are evolving and the building codes require them to make a change. The biggest challenge we are facing, Josh, is that there is a myth about anything you have to do in the building is going to cost you more, right? It's going to be more expensive. I don't think so, right? all our analysis suggests that if the builders work with us at scale, we will actually save them money. I'll give you like a very basic rundown of how they would save money, right? Today, they are doing the manual sealing, which has issues if they have to blow door test, and if they don't pass, they have to go fix it. And if they fix it, it takes them more time to finish the home, and the cost of capital impact, and then impact on the customer satisfaction because people are not able to move in when they want to move. And so that's the picture. Another big problem in the country is that we oversize our HVAC equipment. We are literally over designing our HVAC system by 25% easily. If you have a process like ours, then you don't have to worry about a variability in the overall leakage in the house, which guarantees the amount of load you can have in the home. So you can right size your HVAC equipment. That saves money. It obviously replaces all the manual sealing. They're using gaskets and foam gaskets and caulking gun every place in the house. All that is manual labor. And there is inflation with the labor cost. We are literally, with technology, replacing that manual labor, right? I mean, how much better can a caulking with hand get over 30 years? I don't think it has gotten any better, right?
Probably not.
So
You're right.
as we scale, our cost will get a little bit better. Our price to the builder is going to get a little bit better. But even at today's prices, they seem to think we are expensive. And we are making very concerted effort to show to builders that if you consider all your costs, retesting the house, failures, right-sizing the HVAC equipment, replacing all the manual sealing, we will come out absolutely cheaper for you. That's the biggest battle. And if we can get that thing across, I think we can scale massively.
Got it. The idea that homes are overbuilt around their HVAC systems because it's the default, like, well, we don't really want to deal with this. We don't really know how to measure this. Let's just build in some safety factor. It's just the path of like least resistance, but it's cost, right? And one thing we know about production builders, the biggest builders in the country, cost is king. Everybody wants to do sustainability as long as sustainability doesn't cost any more than the standard. And that's what you got to hit, because that's the reality to work with these big markets. So they're overbuilding their systems. They are using manual labor to caulk everything, trying to seal things up, which is a lot of labor. It's inefficient. It takes time, right? The one thing that jumped out at me talking with a lot of home builders as we've been growing Planted is home builders, they think of building homes like an assembly line. So it's like marketing is on the assembly lines, siting homes, engineering, making sure the land is right, putting in the sewer. Right. It all has to keep moving at a steady pace. And if something blows that up, like the testing is wrong on the envelope of the home or the HERS rating is off, everything comes to a halt. And that's also cost. So I get what you're saying, but I also get that the home building industry in general doesn't necessarily do a particularly great job of measuring things. Right? They don't necessarily know if you say, how much does this labor cost you to caulk a home? Oh, well, we never actually really measured that, right? So it's very hard for you to come in and be like, I'm going to take that cost away that they're not measuring, right? I assume that that's part of the resistance that you have to overcome to really get in and scale, as you're saying, with some of these guys.
That is part of the challenge. The cost is not only hidden in some way, but it's also a little bit distributed. Like there's a little bit of the work needs to be done by the framer, a little bit of work needs to be done by insulation guy, a little bit of work done by the drywall guy. And when things don't work, they literally point fingers at each other. Like, whose problem is it? Who owns the building envelope? No one. I've literally been on some of the job sites, Josh, where the supervisor, right? He just running around with he's like a gunslinger, right? He's got all sorts of caulk guns hanging around and he just goes around and just keeps doing it all the time.
If I'm hearing you, you're in with certain divisions in certain parts of the country with builders, and you're building the business case, right? So and you keep maybe one division to another division, and these divisions for these big national builders are extremely competitive with each other, right? So if one of them suddenly has something that's actually cutting time, becomes more efficient, everyone starts looking and be like, oh, what are you guys doing? It's like, oh, well, we got Aeroseal going, right? And then you start to kind of make some inroads. So in our last few minutes here, I want to dive in with you, you're in lots of different markets. You've mentioned hospitals, you've mentioned tenant high rises, like all these different types of buildings. You're in older homes. I know there's distributors who are reaching those markets. You're in newer homes. You're also in multiple markets internationally. How do you make sure that you're hitting all these markets effectively when you're going after so much at one time?
The answer is we're not hitting all the markets effectively. So we are in like 34 different countries, because if people would Google duct sealing, we come out to be the only solution in the existing building, right? So people were just reaching out to us and we were selling machines. So our model was that we will establish dealers. They will buy our machines, we will train them how to use it, we will train them about how the value proposition, and they would become independent contractor dealers who would go to the market and do the work. So that's how we go to, on the residential side in US, residential retro side. On the new construction side, which came much, much later, I think we got in the market in 2019 for the building envelope sealing. We started with the same model where we had dealers like insulation contractors who would sell their machines and they would go to the builders and do the work. Subsequently, we raised the capital and we realized that to make the sale with the builder, it's a little bit of a concept sale, as I was saying, right? To take the cost, create the right value proposition for the builders, etc. We have started to make our own offices around the country. So we are directly establishing relationship with Lennar, D.R. Horton, and providing the services directly. I think that is the fastest path for us to get to an adoption. Eventually, we don't want to have like 5,000 people, 10,000 people running around. At heart, we are a technology company. Mm-hmm. Once we get to a scale, when the value proposition is well established, I think we would pivot back to having dealer partners more than what we have gone from dealer partner to a little bit vertically integrated. So that's the two business models we have used, dealers and then direct presence.
Got it. Okay, that was my hunch, especially for the large home builders. I figured that you probably have to go direct. Those are complicated sales. You guys need to really be driving those for the reasons we've talked about in terms of the complexity.
Right.
The distribution network, working with dealers who are doing installation, other things, you hone that over time. Those who are really good at selling in and get the value prop and are really mission aligned, I can get that too. What about international? I mean, you mentioned the UK. I know that's a market you guys are looking at because it's so drafty. It seems like the value proposition should really resonate.
We have good reps in Europe. So Europe is growing a little slowly, but we have a really good rep in Germany who represents all of Europe for commercial markets, commercial duct sealing. So we do participate in some policy work or some, overall increasing the awareness about the problem, but we're largely taken a hands-off approach from the dealers developing the market and the reps developing the market for us. Now, we have taken direct presence in Saudi Arabia and possibly now in Dubai in next month or so. And the reason for Saudi Arabia was that, this enormous amount of construction going on. I mean, they're literally building a whole new Europe, looks like to me, in next 5-10 years. When I go to Saudi Arabia, I feel like they're building a whole Dubai in every 4 years or 5 years, right? So that's the kind of construction projects going on. And they are also building those buildings at a high standard. So I see a major opportunity there. And especially with now Aramco Ventures as part of our investor and they being based in Saudi Arabia, all of that coming together, I feel we wanted to have a presence there, and we now have a presence there. We have close to 70 people now in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. And so you've got a strategic investor on your cap table that seems to be really aligned with what you're trying to do, opening doors, helping your business grow in what's going to be really significant ways. Breakthrough Energy also invested, right? I've seen you on Sky News sitting next to Bill Gates. You seem rather impressively comfortable in that environment. So hats off to you. And of course, congrats on that investment. Breakthrough invests in technologies and in climate tech companies that they see have gigaton carbon reduction potential, right? So they see it, obviously you see it, others see it, that because of buildings like we've talked about, envelopes, ducts, and I know you've said this too, I'm just going to cut to the chase. If you think about the amount of leakage in our building envelopes, you're talking about 10% of essentially like global energy is just literally just
getting wasted.
That's
And this I want to be clear. This is a little bit oversimplification,
Of course.
overgeneralization. It's only
Right.
true in certain parts of the world. But yes, the magnitude of problem is very, very large. Yes.
Okay. And so this has to scale. We have to figure out leakage. You're in a position in the market where, like you've talked about, your competitors aren't really other companies coming at you. Your competitors is just kind of the default status quo and policy and other things that or things that are going to move you along. You've talked about the motivation and what you see in the UK, where you have also family, and the fact that there are even highly developed parts of the world where this is a challenge is, as you've said, quite vexing. So that's a key motivation. How much does climate and the fact that you have this climate solution with so much potential, how motivating is that for you and your team?
At the core, that is the drive, right? We want to leave the world better for the generations to come. We only have one planet. I love Elon Musk's mission to colonize Mars. I absolutely find it fantastical and inspiring. But we have a beautiful planet and a wonderful planet right here. And our mission is absolutely at the core of climate. But our action is solving today's problem, right? Back to UK homes, we want to solve the problem of energy wastage today so people don't have to make a choice of heating or eating. That is today's problem. That is not 10 years, 20 years, 30 years problem. That is not all the goals climate conferences come up with 2050. That's why these organizations or these conferences are not super successful. We always come out deflated from these conferences, not super energized about it, right? So we got to solve today's problem with today's solutions.
Well, Amit, I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing all of your experience, your wisdom. I agree with you. And it's just wonderful to hear your story. So excited about Aeroseal and excited to follow your journey.
Thank you, Josh. It was such a pleasure, such a beautiful conversation. Appreciate it.